October 17th, 2014, and we are on Webinar 129 with Peter Holemans from, is it Belgium?
Belgium. Still?
Still. And glad to have him here. If you have your mic on, mute it if you're not the speaker or talking at this time. And so let's get on. This is a great topic. Been looking forward to it. So,
Okay.
without further ado, it's you.
Welcome, everybody. So, what I'd like to present today is actually a framework I'm building based on my years of working with the different products of WINDEV that actually allows to segregate really the business layer and the database connectivity from the UI. So, from all the different projects, I'm actually now assembling some best practices I've had in there, and actually I'm getting into a framework that I would like to share because it's so generic and it allows really rapid application development that it would be nice, well, to share it and maybe to get some people on board to expand it further and to develop it further. So that's the goal. So the goal of today is actually I'm going to show you around a bit in the theory because there's a lot of abstractness and complexity that comes to it, but actually it's all like black boxes. So actually they're there, you can just reuse them. So you shouldn't care, but you should know that they are there and how to use them. So the framework has been put into a project which is being developed in WB and WD for the time being. So it's one project for two platforms. I've started on mobile as well, but I'm bumping into too many restrictions in that area. So a lot of stuff that PCSoft hasn't implemented actually for the different mobile platforms. Also, we're going to build throughout the presentation. So I'm just going to show you how you can build just in a couple of minutes a data entity and a screen that does everything from database I/O through validation through your screen and back. Okay, everybody set? Let's go. So the framework, which is being built currently, actually we can distinguish three different layers. Actually, it's two. So we have everything which is linked to the application, which is global to the application, and which should actually be implemented as a singleton. So typically, I have a generic WX application class, which is abstract and which specializes into a WD application, into a WB for WebDev application, and into a WM application for mobile. Which can then even specialize further for example, a WM iOS application class, one for Android, etc. What does that do? It does everything that is global to the application. So it does all the settings management, so the ini file handling for the different platforms. It does the database connection. It can do the login. It does the SMTP email handling, so the outgoing email sending. It does all the exception handling, logging, debugging, turning on and off, sending notifications by email, etc. So it does actually everything which is global to the application and which can be managed centralized. Now, in order to communicate between all the different objects, so the classes and the business objects and the UI, there are messaging classes. Actually, there's only one message class that contains, let's say, the error ID, the error title, or a message title, and which has 3 levels of information. So it's either an error, it's either a warning, or it's either just an informational message that is being passed around. And multiple error messages are let's say, arrayed or put together into an error list class, which is just an array of the error message classes. The base of these classes, they have been evolving since, but very rarely. Actually, they date back to 2004, and they have evolved not really that much. So it proves that they're pretty stable and serve most needs. Then we have derived single list and combined record costs per business entity. So actually, there are abstract base classes to do all the record management, and each business class will inherit from that base database IO class actually, and will specialize wherever necessary. So the base IO class from which the business objects derive actually always has 7 methods, which is the rec save, the rec add, the rec modify, the rec delete, the rec get by ID, the rec reset, and the validate methods. So you really, with those 7 methods, you can actually manage the complete life cycle of a business object. And then, in case you need it, you could do. You can create your special classes. For example, throughout the years, I have classes for additional string management. I have a class that manages any connectivity towards a JDS instance, for example. You could create your own UI classes, which are typical to the UI that you are building, for example, and that just communicate back with business. So if you look at it from a layered level, so we could say, well, we have a level 0, which contains our application classes. So for which we have an abstract class, which is the WX application, and from which 3 other classes inherit actually. So the abstract class implements everything that's common. It does the application management, it manages the database connectivity, the SMTP, the error logging, exception handling, logging, debug, logging and tracing, etc., and global variables to the application instance running actually. In WebDev, that would be to the session that is running or the AWP context that is being created at that moment. Specialization classes, they do other stuff. So for example, for WD application, it will do everything that the WX application does, but it will also manage auto reconnection. So it will be pulling for the database connection in the case of hypervised SQL Server somewhere on the internet, and will manage the auto reconnection automatically without interfering the user with connectivity losses. For WB, it manages everything that the WX application manages, plus AWP URL encode decode functionality. And in the future, I'm still working on a session management for AWP module, so it should implement that as well. For WM, but I'm not very far in that, so it's WX application plus what I really want in the future is manage remote connectivity towards remote data or any platform-specific implementations. So actually, how do you implement this? It's very simple. If you have one project, so this project is a hybrid project, so it's used by the 3 different products of PCSoft. So actually, you have a dynamic my application object, a context object, which isn't defined yet, so it's defined as dynamic, and an error list which is global to the application level. So should an error come back to the level of the application, so which would then be captured by the when exception statement. Normally it's always captured at a lower level, but in case it hasn't been foreseen in the code that's at the lower level, the exception will be triggered at this level. So you have the my application object, which you see here is it's platform targeted code. So it will be a new W application in the case of a WINDEV application. In the case of a mobile, it will be a new WM application. And in the case of WebDev, it will be a new WB application. So it implements everything. So all the 3 of them implements everything that's managed by the WX application, plus anything that's specific to actually the platform that they are running on. So there should be only one instance for every instance of the application running. In the case of WinDev, that would be the executable running. In the case of WebDev, that would be either the AWP session that lasts for a few seconds, or the classic session that keeps on running until it times out. Okay. So in the framework project that actually I'll be sharing, where can you find these classes? Well, typically these high-level or level 0 application classes are under the single class folder, and you can find them here. And these are the methods actually are implemented by the WX application, and which can be triggered, or a lot of, for example, the debug log and log start and stop can also be triggered by flags in the ini file, or it could be called interactively to start the three different kinds of debugging that the runtime allows you. So you have the auditing, the assertion. Well, you have all the different kinds of that are there. Okay, then we come to actually the generic building blocks that are used throughout the complete system anywhere. So as I told you, you have the messaging objects. So everything to communicate between objects to get back to the user, or come back to the report that is doing stuff with the class. If there's an error, that you can print, for example, the detailed information or error on your report, or bring it back to a screen or to a web page or to whatever. So it's just a generic placeholder to do the messaging between the different layers in the application and to come back to the user. So that's an error message. So SO stands for system object, so which is based like a system object, and the list, which contains actually an array of error messages. Then for the database I/O, there are currently three system objects foreseen. One is the records, which contains actually a single records, so one record. We have a record list, which actually contains a list of the SO records, so an array of those records. And there's one that does all the header detail management, typically everything which is ordering, in which you have a header and a detail, so an order header and a number of order lines. So which contains actually one SO record and an SO record list object into it. So it all comes down to reusability, which you can activate with just a couple of lines of code. So these classes are abstract, so you need to derive them into a specialized class. You cannot instantiate any of these SO record classes. As a future, I'm also thinking about creating classes that, for example, would do all the reflexive management, for example, or parent-child tree-like management. So typically, how is this used in code? For example, we have a function that does the rec modify, which receives an error list message to which whatever may go wrong, all the error messages will be added to it. And if you want to instantiate an error message, you just instantiate like that. So those two system objects, you can instantiate anywhere at any time in your code. What you see here is, for example, we have a sales order header is a class which inherits the records, the base record class. Here we have a sales order line list, so which contains the array of the sales order line class, which inherits the records lists class from it. And then if we look to our records header detail, actually that contains, you see, typically a defined business object class that we have here, which is our sales order header, and a sales order line list, which is there. So it contains those two objects. Remember that any of these SO record classes, you need to derive them into specialized classes. Like in this case, a sales order, which contains of a sales order header and a list of order lines. Okay, in the project that I'll be sharing, where can you find those? The system classes are under the system classes folder. What you see is that the SO record base class has the add, delete, get by ID, modify, reset, save, etc. Methods. The list has a list get methods, and the detail has a delete, get by ID, save, and validate methods. So you are able to create, for example, complete order in memory, do the validate, it will do all the stuff for all the lines for you, and come back with the results if your order is valid or not. Okay, now, how do we put this in place? So, for example, what we have here is we have, for example, a product in our database entity. So there is a little demonstration and testing database as well in the project that I'll be sharing, and a lot of sample windows and sample classes you can work from. So first of all, we need a select query. Next, we need a delete query. So these queries, especially the select one, is a very generic one, so it can accept a multitude of parameters. So you can search a parameter where the product name contains something, but there is always one which is also on the primary key. And there is an optional query that we use, and that is one that does all the duplicate checking. So which is also a generic query, which will, during the validation process, can check for duplicates and come back to the user like, hey, a customer with that name on that address already exists. Are you sure that you really want to create that customer, for example? Or for a product, the product with that barcode already exists. So you can come back with a reasonable error message or warning message back to the user. If you want, and if we go to our WINDEV environments, there's one entity that we could make this very easily for, is, for example, the product family. I don't know if it's a good idea to go through the demonstration and create these base classes by itself. I think it's a 20-minute exercise. Does that sound like a plan? Anybody?
I was muted. Peter, yeah, do it.
Okay. So this product family, which is a very, very simple base class, database entity. So what we'll do is we'll create our sample query, because I've named everything a query which is in the project, because it's just a sample thing, so you can recognize whatever is not part of the query. So product. So typically, we add a condition. I tend to work with a list one where products family ID lists. Okay, then we could say like your condition where using the products code list. And for example, for description, we could just add one and say like contains products. So we can do wildcard searches actually on the data entity. Okay, this is our first query. We don't have any joins, but if there's joins in it, no problem. Then it will come, will be included into the base class that actually is the members. Okay, we're going to do our deletion query as well. Query deletes our product family. Come on. I'm going to make a very basic one, so only one parameter. Call this
Hey Peter, are you the only one using these classes, this framework right now, or do you have some other people using this framework?
Well, there's some guys I work with who I share it with because I use it also for a lot of customers. So, and if other people are modifying it, so it's all there. But actually, I'm creating the framework and bringing it all back together. It's some sort of best practice that I've of experience I've built up through the years. So, and I think it can be very useful. At least there are like big black boxes that allow you to do rapid development. Okay, so we have our two necessary queries. We actually only need two necessary queries, as I told you. Close this. Let's see, where were we? Okay, so then the next step is actually to create two empty base business object classes. So one that will contain our product family and one that will contain a list of product families. So actually the result of a query towards our product family entity. So I'm going to do is during the sample somewhere. Okay. So I'm going to create a new class, which I'm going to call WX sample products family. And I'm going to do another class, which I'm going to call a family lists. Save. Just going to add it. Everything is on an SEM somewhere on a server near Paris, I think. Okay, this is about it. Now comes the fun part. Oops. So we're actually almost there. I've created this little neat WD screen, but the code is generic for WB or WD or for WM. I'm not yet there because there are some constraints on the implementation of some statements for the Android platform. But we could create this window actually as well in WebDev, so people who only have WebDev could be generating their class codes from this. Okay, I'm going to do a go. That I don't need. Okay, and now we're going to see actually the queries that are in my project. So it could be your project as well. We're going to say, well, actually, we're working on our product family. This is our selection query. This is our deletion query. The primary unique key search parameter for both queries, because that should be identical, is where we're going to look for the family ID. It concerns the product family table, and this is the primary key. And I want to name this class WExample. Oh, products. So it actually generates all my class code, which is there. So based on the query. So it would be a join, you would have all the fields as well from the other joins. Now the only thing that I need to implement is the declaration and the constructor. So if we're going to go back to my product family, I'm going to replace the constructor by what has been generated. I've requested on PCSoft to have the ability to save these as class files as well, because there's no way that you can generate, let's say, PCSoft files. So it would be much more easy to generate actually the class immediately instead of going through the copy-paste process. And in the constructor, I'm going to assign these things, which come from the record. Now, I have saved this, so if all is okay, I should already see that in my business class, see, all the methods are already there. So actually now we have already a working class that will write, delete, or get data from the database without writing actually a single line of code. So this already works. What you typically will be implementing at the business class is the validate methods. So which will actually validate the data before it gets written to the database. Okay. So you see, you can implement, for example, typically what you would be doing, it says optional. So wherever it says optional, you don't need to implement it at the business level, but you can. So typically you might do it for a delete methods. You typically will be specializing, let's say, at the object level. In case of our family, one of the business rules typically would be you cannot delete a product family for which we have active products or for which we have products that are in orders, for example. And actually, what we would do is redefine the methods at the business object level, where you can just let's say what has been generated. And what you see is that actually it will actually execute the deletion that has been defined at the parent level, so at the SO record level, which is generic. It will do the deletion if it finds the primary unique key for it. But if you want to do any validation before your deletion, you would actually insert that here and say like check if the product family is still used somewhere. And say B. Go ahead, it's Boolean. Could do any processing here. And just if if we can proceed, so you set the flag and then you say if we can proceed with the deletion, then only we will execute our physical deletion, which is managed actually by the app record class. We do the IO. And else we will say success.
So all this stuff, Peter, can't be brought in automatically?
Well, no, because you can't. It's a request I've had to PCSoft support. I know how far they are, but let's say any of the file formats that are managed by PCSoft, they're encrypted. They're as closed as I don't know,
It's a black box.
as a black box. So you can't, you really can't generate, because it would be so much easier if I just could generate the WDC, so the file, and just save the WDC. So the user wouldn't have to do anything. So, and he would already have the base class without having to do the copy paste stuff.
So
But as I said,
so the
there's
stuff
only
that Glenn's doing, oh, I'm sorry. The stuff Glenn's doing with RAD and stuff, Glenn, is that possible to get this stuff dropped in?
it should be possible.
Okay.
I've seen one of the webinars from Glenn. Because I left RAD, I think I looked at it from 99 till 2001 or so, but actually I looked at it again. And actually, because it's very on-demand, you know, it's hard to create stuff, and it's not that open to be able to generate that. But it should be possible to, because actually what I'm doing now, and we'll get to there, is I use model windows and model pages. And actually, those could be transformed into RAD pages that do the stuff.
Unless they don't support classes. Huh? I don't know.
Yes, they do, but there's some limitations.
Okay.
So, okay, let's proceed. So you don't need to implement this. I'm just showing you. You could specialize a delete if you want to do something before you do the physical delete, or if you want to do something after the physical delete. So here you could say, well, if the deletion is done, I want to do this and this and this and this as well, for example. So it allows you to, let's say, specialize, which is all one of the advantages of an object-oriented approach. What you also will see in the window is just a placeholder of typically what a validate function will be. So you will be implementing that most of the time as well. Well, you will be writing that. So actually, this gives you a bit of placeholder and an example on how you could do that. So you can just type it over and say like, okay, these are my mandatory fields. When I set an error message, please enter a description. So it just provides you a bit of a, so let's say, placeholder on which to base your validation. Typically for a customer, so I've implemented a validate there as well. So what you first will see is that we'll do a couple of checks for duplicates, for example. We'll check on name and code. For example, I have the same name, so, and it will set it as a warning. You see, a customer would say name and first name exists. Make sure you are entering no duplicate data. It does a duplicate check on internal reference. If the internal reference is the same, it will pull up an error. If the email address already exists, it's a duplicate, so it will pull up an error, etc. If the VAT number, so bank account number, that sort of stuff. Then it does the mandatory fields. So you can have a look in there and just see how you typically do a validation. So actually now we already have a working business class for our product family. We haven't implemented or defined the business rules yet in the validate statement, but I'm sure you all understand on how that needs to be done. So then there's one more thing to do, that is develop our product family list class, which is also generated in here. There's only two things we need to copy. That is, again, the declaration of the class, which is actually here. As you see, it inherits the SO record lists. Now, by saving it, you will see that immediately, and it's in italic, so it means the method from the parent is implemented. That's how you can distinguish that. So from the SO. And then we only need to assign the addresses. And hold on, it's required. I think I was working on making that non-required. And I'll do this. Okay. That's I'm going to go back. So where were we? So we've done this. We've generated the class codes. We've copied the class declarations into our two classes. So in the business object class and into the list class. As I told you, the italic ones are methods that are already fully working, but only implement actually, based on what's implemented at the parent level. So they already do all the database I/O, etc. So typically you implement the validate and the set audit trail. That's a method that actually I put in because every record, typically in the systems I developed, they have an audit trail, a number of audit trail fields, or they might have additional audit trail requirements based by the business, which will then manage actually everything which does the audit trail. Okay, so we've done that. Okay, you implement the business rules in the validate methods. So that's what I showed you. And actually, we're all ready to do the UI generation based on window and page models. And you can brew your own, of course, based on the models. Okay, let's have a look first at the models. So I've created three models actually. One is a browse. It will contain a table. It can do fetching. It allows you to go to new records, edit the records, and delete the records. If we would go and have a look at the code, you will see that it's pretty minimal. You need to declare the prototype in your window in the detail, and you need to define a list object and a detail object. The name of the detail window to open, the name of the table fields, could be a looper field as well, but it's just for the sake of the idea. You have this, and very unique key field name. Stop this test for a minute. Where was I? Now, if we would look at all the object codes, you would see that it's very minimal. There's closing of the window. There's a generic query methods, which will actually pull up the data to the screen. One new button which will open a non-modal window. A modify button, so because a table is, my tables in general are multi-selection, so it will open all the detail windows for all the lines that you've selected, all by generic code. There's not a single, let's say, line that is dedicated to any business object in this. So this is all the code of this window, which will actually work as it is. Which to the in the edit window. So what you will see is you have a save and close, cancel, and just a save button. You have this thing that pulls back any validation messages, etc. Okay, so if we go to our sample windows and we say we have a new window, which would be our edit window. Based on that, give it a name. It's going to call them sample products family. Just keep it a bit. Okay, this is it. Go to this. I'm going to do the declaration. So typically, I foresee if it receives a 0 as a unique ID, it's an addition. If it's a copy mode, it will actually pull up the record for which it received the ID and will then set the unique key back to 0. So for our base record class, it will be a new record that will need to be added to the database. And we're going to declare global that obg is a WX product family. That's it. I'm just going to add a little validation in here. So I'm going to say if it's in the description, and this one. So this is the validation method of our product family. So now normally all goes well when I press go. It should work. I'm going to add it to put it in add mode. I need some fields there, of course. But it should already work. Hold on, if I do go. And I do say save. It will tell me, oh, enter a description. The data is not saved. Okay. Here's one of the funky parts I'm still waiting from PCSoft as well. Actually, we need to pull up all the fields from the database. I'm going to change the links to my detail objects. Just code. Yeah, it's just like cursive one. Okay. So, say, pull me up the first one. It will show me that. So if I now, for example, want to save it with a blank code, it does it. Oh yeah, it's a description that needed to be blank. Okay, so I'm going to go again. Pull up one. There's something wrong here. Okay, not gonna spend too much time. Okay, I see this. I'm gonna remove this for a minute. It's the image. Okay. That was my phone. So you see, this already works now. So now if I pull up this one, just say save. And now if I want to update this one, see, it will tell me, well, you're not allowed to update this because you need to enter your family name. So if I save this, and I pull this back up, I have the saved value. So that works already. So this is actually the detail screen we've already created now. We've done the linking, the objects. It works. Okay, now the browse window. Browse. But of course, you can brew your own templates to do this. Okay. We're gonna, I might just show you actually how it works. So for example, here are several of these windows already generated based on the same methodology as described in the presentation. So on a customer, it's based on a template, it just works like that. Filtering is very easy to implement. So for example, if I say, well, give me only customers that contain a 0 in their company name, it just works like that. And to modify it, I can say save. This is a warning. So you see, press OK again to confirm. So it's saved. So for warnings have to be, let's say, confirmed by the user. This is it. And if we go and look at the browse window, so let's say our browse customer, there's not much code in there. So what you see is actually that we instantiate a customer list object, a customer object, we define which window we use to edit actually the data by itself. We provide the table name, so which is actually the grid, and we provide the primary unique key fields column name actually in the table that will be passed. That's actually the only thing that we need to declare. All the rest is managed automatically. Apart from the filtering is done very easy. So actually what we have done here, we have overloaded the code of the query button. So actually this is what happens by the ancestor, so which comes from the model. So it will do a list get on the list object. It will display any errors that there are. And if there are no errors, it will just display the table. Now, to set our filters, as I stated, we've defined a query that can have multiple parameters. So in the case of our company, of our customer, we've created a query. I'll open that up for a minute. Oh, this is the deletion one. Our selection customer. See that actually accepts just a lot of parameters, any possible. So in the case of our browse window, the query that is part of our list business object class is actually defined by this member. Actually, we just say, well, for our list object, on this query, this parameter, the name contains, needs to be equal to whatever is entered into this field above. And we set all the parameters that are required, and then we just say, well, execute whatever comes from my model window, which will do the get and do the display of the table, etc. In just a couple of lines of generic code. Okay, let's see where we were. So hold on, down. This is then list objects. We've created tables. Of course, you need to again drag your select query to the screen. The wizard from WINDEV will pop up, or from WebDev, to generate your table. And after that, of course, you have to change the content, that it will be the list object, and that in this case, it will be the product ID that will be stored, for example, because that's the key that will be stored. In general, WINDEV generates the primary unique keys as statics. So watch out. In my case, they're all numerics. So you have to change the format to that. Otherwise, you will bump into a runtime error. Okay, you link the columns, and that's actually what it is. Almost no lines of code. Okay, so we've done the first part. Let's say we've created the product family business class, the base and the list class, without coding very much. Now there's a combined header detail business class. I'll show that around. Close all but me. So we have a sales order browse, very simple thing. So actually what we see here is we have one object, a sales order, that contains a sales order header business class, business object, and a sales order detail business object, for which we can choose. Say I want to have for example, if I would exit this, it would tell me, oh, you need to enter a quantity different from 0. If I would save, it would tell me the same thing. On line 2, you need to enter a quantity based on 0. I'll do this. The line is okay. I'll save this. Okay. I go back in there. My lines are there. There's almost 0 to none code behind this. So it's all managed by the base business classes. I'm going to say I want 3 of these. And actually, I want to delete this line. So actually now it's sort of, you see, strike through. But it will only be deleted whenever I click the save button from the database. Or OK and go. So I go back in there. See, it's all there. Now, and if we look at the implementation of this class, that's where immediately the advantage of reusability comes in there. I know the GUI isn't that bad, but I haven't used styles or whatever, so it's just the proof of concept, this thing. So where's our edit sales order? That's also based on a model. And actually, if we look at the code in there, it's pretty simple. We have a header detail object, which is declared here. See, this is from the template. We have a customer list and a product list. Actually, this allows us in the screen, it could be a combo, it could be a pop-up, it could be anything, to select from there and to select a product in our detail grid. And what do we do? For the sake of the simplicity, we get all customers at the initialization of our screen, and we get all the products just by these 2 commands. Everything is ready for us. We have all our customers, we have all our product lists. We could be filtering again, so you could just add, say, like, well, product lists, the query select name, and then the parameter, for example, active equals true. We'll only fill the list with products that have an active flag, for example. So no need to redefine all the time your queries, etc. You actually just instantiate a simple object. I want a product list, just instantiate it, and just get the data you need. You set the parameters, you get the data, you have your list for which you can start working. Which again, generic code. It will do the header detail object. It will get the order. We'll get all the stuff, and if it's in copy mode, it will copy the existing order into a new one by clearing the primary key flag to 0 for the parent order, so the header, and to do the same for all the detail lists. That's about it. That's all the complexity that there is to it. You want to save it. It's all coming from the template. All it does, it pulls my screen back to my class. It calls the header detail object record save, which is a more advanced class, generic class, coming from a header detail, which contains actually the full order. So what you see here is, for example, in the rec save, it will do it in a transaction, of course, because we want to save the order as complete, the header and all the lines. And if one of them fails, we don't want to save anything. So what actually will it do? It will do for the header, it will do the rec save. So if I am able to save my header, then for all the lines that are in my order, do the same, do the rec save. And actually that all goes back to the original, for each record, to the original as a record class. All automatic. You don't have to write any line of code for that. You just have to call the rec save method and it will do everything for you. It will identify if it's an add to the database or identify if it's a modify to the database based on the key that is being passed. If no key, primary unique key is passed, it will not. If no primary unique key is passed, it will add it to the database. Otherwise, it will modify. So I know this has some constraints, especially towards older databases. So this system is built actually for a well normalized and designed database using numeric primary primary unique keys. It's easy, however, to convert it into something that would be more generic, just by changing the expected parameters without typing them actually. So, and using the let statements for that. So I don't know if you know the let statements. So typically you would say like let's be primary. So let's be primary unique key ID. So it will expect anything, and it will define the type based on whatever it gets. So that's a way to overcome that. So because I can imagine that based on a lot of database designs that I already have seen, that it isn't just transposable as is to any existing stuff. It shouldn't be too hard to modify it in that sense. So in the record header detail, what we have implemented are, again, the save, the by ID, the gets, save, and delete. That's all actually that we need to implement, and the validate, which again does it for the header and does it for all the order lines. It's generic code. It could be also purchase order lines, purchase order lines, just by declaring whatever objects you will be using in it, or you will be specializing in. So let's see, where are we? Oh yeah, just as I'm working on the web dev side, so I'm going to close this project now. Okay. So you can just open the same project, but in WebDev. For the classes, for example, what you will see, because you see I have several configurations for the same project. I have a WebDev site, so now I'm just in my WebDev site. I have for WinDev the Win32 executable, could also be the Win46 executable, an Android and an iOS configuration. So these are, for the same project, actually all the targets we could compile to. So, for example, if you would look at the singleton classes, you would see that, for example, for our current configuration, the WebDev site, I have excluded these from the configuration, so they will not be taken into account. So you can just say like exclude from the current configuration. So typically in WebDev, you wouldn't need any WD stuff, and vice versa, of course. Here I'm still a bit working on my my template windows. But I've created, for example, on the same disk, you see the same window. It's actually identical, the three same buttons, an list somewhere, and something to save on. So all this does, if we look at the code, it does the same. Well, it does a bit more to check on AWP, but actually it accepts parameters, parse them from AWP, and actually does the same. It does direct get by ID, get the detail object, throw it to the page. If we look at the code for the save button, it's the page to the source, does the rec save, and if there's any errors, throw me back the message. So if we would say do a go, so it's the same base business object that's underneath it. So I haven't changed anything. It just instantiates a product code. So now it tells me I haven't passed a parameter or a parameter that doesn't exist. It tells me, well, the record could not be retrieved. Possibly has been deleted by another user. If I would pass now, I think there's a number 1. See, it will get my first thing. All it does, it uses the same base business class that's here, the product class in this case, which is being instantiated in here. Nothing new to write, it's all there. It uses the same logic, no duplication of code. That's how it should be. So, any questions?
So, any questions? Your mic, you can open up your mic or type down at the chat. Toronto, I am developing an EP. Would it be interesting example?
I will be posting an example on the PCSoft repository. I'll be removing my old post, which was a bit a base idea or conceptual thing I did a couple of years ago with this project, and the PowerPoint with it as a step-by-step application.
Peter, I can post it on WX Live also. So.
As well. So it's just a question of keeping it up to date on the different if there's multiple sites. So
well, yeah.
And also the idea is actually I want to open this up to a limited number of really core developers that bring in all their knowledge and all their experience as well to actually further develop this to a framework that on the long term might be used to a lot of more people. So through a central SEM on which it is now, central control center, which it can be evolved, and it might also be if it's as a framework, it might also be a good idea to get some priority if we have some requests, for example, on creating our WDC files ourselves, for example, through something that PCSoft might put available for us.
Exactly. Wolfgang asks, do you use a lot of indirection in your classes?
Relatively, yes. Otherwise, it can't be generic. So you see, we've just based on the base on those 4 core base classes. We haven't written anything to write or get data from the database. Those do it all for any database entity, actually. So it has to use some direction.
Bendel asks, for the open source, we would, for instance, add additional classes like audit trail classes, etc., and update you with that, right?
I would really open it up on an SEM somewhere centrally, to which, let's say, the team of developers that want to be part of, let's say, a global team to get this evolved, on which we would collaborate on the same project, on this sample project actually. That would contain all the base stuff and the reusable stuff. Does that answer the question?
Ben? Yes, it does. Thomas.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Wolfgang.
The reason why I'm asking about indirection, you know what industry I am in a sense that we put a lot of data through because of the alarm signals what's coming through. The problem I've got with indirection, and that's the reason why I started writing my own, is that indirection ultimately is slower than reference variables, and I use a lot of referencing by reference instead of indirection. It's possible to do that, but that's why I like what you've done, but I've actually started moving away from the indirection in the sense that it's slow in a database if you've got a whole lot of data to keep putting through. Any of that, have you tested yours and have you come to that conclusion or not?
Don't have that problem. Yeah. No. I have pretty heavy systems that use with a lot of indirection, but there are a few things to keep in mind when using indirection. Is that you always or at best type what you are trying to parse at runtime. So if you would
that comma indicator to show the variable or the file or the item, which I've done, but it's still not as fast as using referenced.
Yes, but then I'm wondering how you can get to generic code without having interpretation at runtime. Because the whole idea of indirection is actually that you have code that you write once and use anywhere against whatever object. So it means that the runtime needs to interpret at runtime what it will be working with or what you are referring to. While with reference, that is something that you link really upfront. So the linker already does all that work upfront, but it'll cost you genericity on your code because you'll have to duplicate code. So it's something that you have to balance. So it's like denormalization on a database. I'm very school book like that, but you can and may denormalize, but only for performance reasons. And I would say the same for indirection.
Yeah. Just one thing I've picked up from other classes I've seen other people use and try to do this. There's a lot of places we use indirection when, strictly speaking, we don't even need to use indirection. So, example, if you use hopen or hadd, I've seen people use indirection within that, but you don't have to. You actually just declare a string and pass it.
No, I don't use it.
Okay.
It's so like if you saw where I'm referring to the query parameters from the window. So actually, you could do that with indirection, but I didn't do it. You have the instance of the class there, and actually the indirection had already been done during the class instantiation.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why I'm asking. I'd like to see how you've done it, because that's my biggest issue. A lot of times it's not. You need to use indirection, and so a lot of places where WINDEV itself, the own functions, say pass a string, or alternatively the file name. But because of the string, it doesn't need to do.
For example, in my modify statements, there's no direction at all. If you would go to the save, that's one, and that's
the online help will say the parameter can be a variable, a quoted or not.
Yeah, that is the indication for
online help. Yeah, if it says that it can accept a quoted string, then you don't need indirection to pass that parameter.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in this case, for example, if you look at the save method, but this all looks to let's say members of the class itself. So you know the lists to look through, because what you'll see as well is that I use almost 0 to non-global variables. So because the runtime, typically how that is written, it will first look at the scope that is currently running in. So let's say typically in my programs it will always find actually the variable or what it's looking for in its own context almost immediately. So it doesn't have to look through a global context, which can be very vast, because then you can get indeed into your global hyperfile context that it will be looking, etc. So and then it can become slow. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It was nice to see how you've done it, because that's the thing what I ran into when I started writing my own classes, and I ended up doing a lot of referencing, and that worked a lot better. I've tried to shy away wherever possible from indirection. Anyway, thanks.
But I'll be publishing the project so with all the samples, so you can have a look and play around with it. And
it's fantastic work. I can see that you've done a lot of thought into it. It's very well put together. Thanks for the showing us.
No problem.
Hey, Peter, we have a question from Tomas. Okay, it says, joined late, but have you considered implementation of complex links via relation table in your concept?
Well, I actually already do that in other programs that I've built likewise. And actually, the relation table is just another SO record element from which you will derive. So actually, and you will just manage that as another database entity or as another business object for which you will, from another specialized class, from which you will be adding or removing records in that relation table. So the whole advantage of this is also that you can reuse other objects, other business objects in your own business object, like I have done, for example, in the did I close this? Okay. Oh, have it open. In the if I would look at the business class, for example, in the sales order class. So actually, that just uses a sales order header class and a sales order detail line list class. Nothing prevents you from just having, for example, I'm going to say a customer. It's a typical multiple relationship. The customer can have a lot of contact moments, and a contact moment can have a lot of contact outcomes, so to speak. So your contact moment would be a sort of in between a multi-to-multi relationship table. But typically you would manage that from either your customer business class or either your contact moment class, so to speak. And you would manage and create that relationship table out of there. And you can create your own methods in that sense. Huh? So nothing prevents you from specializing any of these classes further to whatever you need. I don't know if I've done this for one of these. Could be. No, but there will certainly pop up some more examples on that. So as this framework will be evolving, I'm sure I'll add a sample of that as well, in there as well. I've done it in other of my projects. So, and actually, you don't implement anything special for it. You just reuse it as a database or business entity that you manage from either one of the records that are related to it or business objects that are related to it. Does that answer the question? The big advantage is reusability. Yeah? Okay, transactions, I see that coming. So what you see is there's one pain if you're using hyperfile, that is that you cannot nest transactions. So that is a pain. But as a general rule of thumb, I have transactions implemented wherever they are needed. So in this case, typically, where we have a combined class like our sales order, which has the sales order business object and a list of sales order lines. If we would go to the save method of that one, what you will see is this save sales order. No, it's in the base class. Sorry, so the record header detail. So what you typically will see is that that is implemented as a transaction. So actually, whatever needs to be done all together in one transaction, you will typically also implement in one specialized method to do that. So think always as objects as something with which you can do something. So that what you can do something with is something you will implement in a method. And so if that something needs to be managed as a whole, you will implement that transaction in that method. Reusing possibly other objects and other methodologies, but you will block the transaction to the method. So as a general rule of thumb, always transactions should be as short as possible. So you would typically do that in one code block. Okay, any others?
I'm not seeing any others. Hey, this is, like Dan said, great presentation. I love how you organized it. And I'm looking forward to seeing people help get this thing going.
Yeah, but it can help people. So it provides me my little rad, you know. It really brings me up to speed really fast to deliver stuff that really works great. And often, well, a lot of the time is on the UI side and on the presentation side. So you can just bring down all the business logic and just centralize that. And not having to bother all the database UI, etc., because that's all managed through these base classes.
So on your UI side, when you set that, you basically have a certain style.
No, actually, what I used is the templates feature. Now, my ID, and I know they have implemented now in WD+20. That's the MVP, the model view presentation or presenter. That's a concept which is a bit variance on the MVC, the model view controller. They have implemented it for WINDEV, so I'm very keen to see actually how they've implemented that sort of RAD. But it's only implemented for WINDEV, so it's not available for WebDev or WINDEV Mobile, so it's not available for hybrid projects neither. So then I say, well, if you have these three products and you know the future is hybrid applications, you know, they have a web front end and they have a mobile part or some functionality and they have a back office part. So actually you need all the three products. Then well, the MVP that's announced now with WX20, I'm sitting a bit on my hunger over there because it's only implemented in WD. But I'm sure that conceptually, let's say the lower end side, so the database I/O and the business rules layer will be implemented, I think, similar to what you're seeing here.
Cool. All right. Anything else for Peter? Thank you for taking the time to put this together and sharing. Looks like there are a lot of people pretty interested. I know there's a bunch of people says I can't wait to watch the video because I've been chatting on Skype with different people. Okay, where to go from here? Okay, so how I guess what Tomas is asking, he says if people want to participate with
send me an
you
email
or your core
to start
group
with.
or whatever? What do you want them to do?
So
Just contact you and
my email address, I'll type it just over here. So that's peter.holemans@mcs2.eu. I'll see what I can do.
can you make that big?
The biggest I can get.
Okay. No, that's great. So Tomas, that's where you go. I'm sure you'll be hearing from a bunch of people. Hopefully
Okay.
they,
Thanks everybody
become your core
for
group.
listening. And
Okay.
maybe another
Always
time.
have a follow-up some other time. So, yeah. You want me to type it here? Okay. Oh, Tim, you're doing it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you can copy and paste. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. That was really good.
Thank you so much.
Is there claps?
Thanks for the flowers. But
Tim,
you know what
do
they
you
say in
have
French?
to,
After the flowers, there's a pot
yeah.
coming to your head.
I
No,
know
nothing to add.
Oh. Oh. Tim, you have anything to say?
That's not good.
Nothing. I just looking forward
Yeah.
to the DevCon.
Okay.
It's coming up.
There's
Not very long
Adriano.
from now.
In
9
9
days.
days.
Wow. Yeah, pretty quick.
Okay.
9 days.
Cheers, guys. Have a great
Bye.
weekend. De rien, avec plaisir.
Thanks a lot, Peter.
Bye bye.
Very
Cheers.
much.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Okay, I'm stopping the recording now.